Hello, hello, hello. It is me, your True Hill Phenom SP3, back once again with an exclusive interview, True Heels BTR Between the Ropes with former Impact World Champion Josh Alexander, the walking weapon. I'm so excited to talk to you. You're one of the top people that I wanted to speak to. You kind of are completing my Impact bucket list. It was you and Speedball Mike Bailey on it, and I'm completing it right here. So I'm happy to talk to you.
I'm happy to help you complete the list, man.
And we are talking before a huge month in Impact Wrestling. October, you got Impact Bound for Glory on October 21st. You got the UK Invasion Tour on October 26th through the 29th. And Impact Bound for Glory, the biggest event of Impact's year. You're in the main event against Alex Shelley for the Impact World Championship. Kind of tell me about this journey for you coming back from injury and then getting back into the main event of the biggest show of Impact's year.
Oh, well, the injury was really unlike anything I've ever experienced in pro wrestling before. I, of course, hurt my neck and I had surgery for that, but I never was incapable of moving my limbs and using them afterwards, like luckily enough. This was like my left arm was in a sling for the better part of 6 to 8 weeks, and it was just all about trying to rebuild that arm and get the strength back and become comfortable and explosive again, like I was in the ring before. And it was a long road. Like it didn't feel right for almost, up until like a few weeks before I came back at Slammiversary, and I was really questioning it. But the doctors and everyone else said it was completely healed, completely fine. It was just all kind of a mental game that you had to maneuver. But I came back at Slammiversary. I laid down the gauntlet to Alex Shelley, reminded him I'm back, and made all the tensions clear that it was for that Impact World Championship. But unlike things in the past, with me in Impact Wrestling, I wasn't trying to rush back to anything like I had with Moose. And I bided my time, and I think after handling things with Steve Macklin that were waiting to be waiting to be handled for a very long time. Now the sole focus is on regaining that Impact World Championship against Alex Shelley, and I'm very happy to say I get to do it on the biggest stage in Impact Wrestling, and that's the main event of Bound for Glory.
I'm very excited for this matchup. I thought you and Alex Shelley had one of the best matches of last year at Emergence. And, you talk about this injury that you have and comparing it to, the neck injury that you talked about, that kind of changed your whole life and career. Kind of how do you compare kind of the two besides like not being able to move your limbs, but as far as like the recovery process from one to the other?
Well, the recovery process for the neck was, you feel completely fine when you're done. It's just a waiting game. And, the better part of that was that the mental game helped me because I thought my career was over. So when I look back at everything I'd accomplished before, or rather didn't accomplish, I was able to refocus and say, if I ever do come back from this, I'm going to not take anything for granted. I'm going to work harder than I ever worked before. I'm not going to take any shortcuts. I'm not going to take any days off. And I'm going to make sure that, I work as hard as possible to make something happen. And luckily, when I came back, I did just that. And a few years later, I got signed by Impact Wrestling. And, anybody that's watched Impact since I've arrived 4.5 years ago knows that it has been nothing but an upward trajectory since because of all that hard work. And, I don't think I would be in this position I'm in unless I hurt my neck. But then I'm on top of, the Impact Wrestling world with the Impact World Championship, the longest reign in company history, and I blow up my tricep. So that's something that, knocks you down 6 pegs on that ladder immediately mentally. And it's all about whether or not you can get back up that ladder to be what you were before, if not better. And, I was questioning myself a lot in those 5 months I was at home. I was still working really hard, but it's all about that mental game of whether or not you can come back and be the same for the fans and be the same for the company that signed you. And luckily now, two and a half months back active in the ring, I can say that I feel better than I ever felt before from all that hard work I put in, thankfully. But it was never a guarantee. So I'm just happy to be here, happy to be 100%, happy to be feeling fine, and happy to be going for that world championship again.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of remarkable how fast you were able to come back from this injury. And, one of the more important parts about you as a performer and, as a person, you've shown that you're a family guy. You have your wife by your side, your son, so adorable, by the way. And I'm a person, I have twins myself, so I can relate to being a father. How are you able to balance that? And at that time when you're recovering from the injury, focusing on that at the same time, how are you able to balance all of that at one time?
Well, I was lucky because both my sons were in school at the time I got injured. So, it was just trying to tell them, daddy can't wrestle around with you after school right now or on weekends with you right now because daddy's hurt. And, I had that sling and I had that cast on my arm for the first little bit. So, it wasn't so easy, wasn't so hard for them to understand. But the second that cast came off and I didn't, already feel like I was normal, it was kind of a tough balance there to remind them every once in a while that even though daddy's arm's not in a sling and a cast anymore, daddy still can't do this stuff.
Yeah.
But I try to make the best of it. I got to be home with my family for that entire time. Through the better part of the summer, I got to spend a ton of time with them, like I haven't in the past few years, and I just embraced it, made the best of it. And now, that I'm back to work, luckily I can say that they travel with me to all the Impact Wrestling shows, so I don't miss any time with my family, which I'm very fortunate for. And I get to be a dad and a pro wrestler at the same time.
Living the dream. That's awesome. And like I said at the top, this is a huge month coming up in October for Impact Wrestling, but it's also a huge month for you outside of Impact Wrestling because you're going to make your first visit over to Japan. And Impact Wrestling and their partnership with New Japan has been a big part of a big year for Impact Wrestling with the two Multiverse United shows. And now you and the Motor City Machine Guns challenging Kazuchika Okada, Tomohiro Ishii, and Hiroshi Tanahashi for the never open weight 6-man tag team titles at Destruction in Ryogoku coming up in October. So how are you looking forward to your first visit in Japan and being a part of a huge show for New Japan Pro Wrestling as well?
I mean, I don't know how I put it into words because I'm so excited, and I'm a guy, like, I don't get super excited for anything, especially in wrestling, because you always feel like you're gonna get let down somehow. But the Japanese wrestling is something I discovered, when I was 15 years old, the same time I discovered TNA, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, all these other companies. That's just when the birth of the internet came in, and I discovered all these things, and it blew me away. Just like the focus on the in-ring style and the stuff that they were putting on. And it was something that has evaded me for nearly 18 years in this business. I've never traveled to Japan. So when I finally, got to do New Japan Strong over the last few years and stuff like that, it was always spoken of like, man, we need to get you to Japan. I was just like, well, you guys just let me know, man. It's just a waiting game. And then finally I was at do you guys know what a splash pad is?
No, no. What's the splash pad?
It's like an outdoor park where it's like a water park without slides and stuff like that, where you can
Okay.
take your kids on hot days so they enjoy themselves, like a little wading pool and stuff like that. And I had my sons at a splash pad just hanging out on a sunny summer day, and I got an email being like, we need this information from you for this and this because you're coming to New Japan. And I was just like, what? Like, this came out of nowhere, right? You just check your email inbox, and and then a few weeks later the match gets announced, and you're just like, this is the first match I get to compete in when I come to Japan at New Japan. So, you know, I'm very excited, as a pro wrestler, as a wrestling fan, because I've been lucky enough to be in the ring before with one of, like, my favorite Japanese wrestlers, and Tomohiro Ishii. But to get in there with the Ace and Okada at the same time, it's a hell of a way to debut. So I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to show up to New Japan Sumo Hall for my very first show, and I intend on making a statement and doing more of what I've always done for the past few years, and that's put all eyes on me and all eyes on Impact Wrestling at the same time.
I'm very excited for this. I'm a huge New Japan fan as much as I'm a huge Impact Wrestling fan, and very much looking forward to seeing you represent Impact Wrestling over in New Japan Pro Wrestling. But I gotta ask, because you are kind of waving the flag of Impact Wrestling. So I gotta ask you about Okada's comments towards Impact Wrestling in regards to you guys coming over and challenging for the never open weight championship. I do a New Japan podcast over on wrestling, and I always say Okada's been an angry dad, and we're both dads, so we can relate to being an angry dad sometime. But he's very disgruntled towards Impact Wrestling in general, and you guys coming over. What do you think about his comments that he made?
I mean, You could take exception to them, of course. Like his comments, he was very respectful towards myself, Alex Shelley, and Chris Sabin.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And all respect goes to those three guys as well. You know, I think we all know that we all respect each other and what we can do in a ring. But the second, he calls out Impact Wrestling and then later corrected himself to say he hated TNA. Uh, for somebody who was watching in that day and age, I don't think I can blame him that much. So, it was a tough time back in the day for TNA, and luckily, now things have changed. So, myself, Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin get to show up, in Sumo Hall with a kind of a chip on our shoulder and show him that things have changed and that we are the best wrestlers in the world. Hopefully, we can take those 6-man tag belts from them.
Yes, and I'm gonna fingers crossed everything works out with you and Shelly teaming up that close to Bound for Glory. Someone else who's gonna be a part of Bound for Glory that me myself, I'm just putting it out there. I love politicking to Scott D'Amore because I'm sure he's gonna watch one of these interviews one day. And one of the matchups I would love to see since he's coming over for Bound for Glory is you and Will Ospreay. What do you think about Ospreay returning to Impact Wrestling at Bound for Glory? Huge matchup with someone you're very familiar with, Speedball Mike Bailey. In my opinion, Impact's match of the year of 2022 was your classic 1 hour bout on Impact on Access TV. What do you think about that match and Ospreay in general in Impact Wrestling?
Well, that match was supposed to happen at Multiverse United, correct? And then,
Yeah.
from injury problems, with Will Ospreay, of course, he's going to get beat up having this amazing year he's had, putting on these matches he's had. Nobody can question why, he's going to get banged up. He couldn't do the booking, so now that match gets to happen at Bound for Glory on the biggest stage Impact Wrestling has, and I think it's only going to make it that much more special. That Chicago crowd, we've been there a couple times this year, is amazing, and no doubt it's going to be even better for Bound for Glory with that packed house, completely sold out. And it's going to be tough to say that's not going to be the match of the year before it even happens. Like I saw it announced and I went, damn, my work's cut out for me, to try to win that match of the year 3 years in a row now. But, if Will Ospreay wants to show up at Impact Wrestling in the States again before the end of the year, or, in Newcastle at Turning Point, if he wants to step up to me, I'd be completely willing and ready for that matchup because, for me, I think it's a tough thing to say that Will Ospreay isn't the best wrestler in the world this year with all the matches and wins he has, against some of the very best. And, for all things considered, even though Alex Shelley is the world champion and I recognize that fully, I think a lot of people kind of look at me as the best wrestler in Impact Wrestling, bell to bell, and I certainly look at myself that way, and I have the confidence in myself that way. So, if we're going to take Will Ospreay out of New Japan and we're going to put him in an Impact Wrestling ring, I think I got to defend our home turf, and I would love the opportunity to do that.
We need to find out who the real best wrestler in the world is. And I think that's the perfect matchup. So, Scott, if you're watching, I'm putting it out there. I'm politicking in the world. The UK Invasion Tour, Will Ospreay versus Josh Alexander. I think that sounds like a money matchup. I don't know if does Josh agree? Do you agree?
Oh, easily a money matchup.
All right. Just making sure we're all on the same page. But coming out of October, you're pretty much looking like you can be a double champion. So you have a lot on your plate coming up for the year. But I just want to kind of taking a reflecting look. You are somebody that started off in an established tag team with the North, longest reigning Impact tag team champions, and then you have gotten so much success as a singles competitor. So to kind of look at the landscape of Impact Wrestling, is there anyone in a tag team that you think can replicate or come close to the same success you have from going from a tag team to a singles competitor?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think of the tag teams we have. Well, it's not that tough. I think Trey Miguel is somebody that I've looked at, over the past few years and been like, he's capable of pretty much anything in a wrestling ring under the right circumstances. But then you also have Chris Bay and Ace Austin in a tag team, and I think either of those guys I've spoken very highly over the past few years of both of them. I think they have unlimited potential. I think that they're like very good in the ring. It's just there's a learning curve when you get in there on the singles capacity to be in the world championship, echelon of things. And the one thing that everybody overlooks is the pressure that's involved with being that guy, being the world champion, having to do the media, having to carry all the weight of the company on your shoulders. And it's something that I found out really quickly, and I had to kind of navigate those waters very fast to be able to handle that pressure. And a lot of people can't, which is something not a lot of wrestling fans talk about, because I don't think they recognize the amount of pressure that there is to go out there in the main event Like, just look at me. I'm wrestling in the main event at Bound for Glory against Alex Shelley, trying to regain that Impact World Championship. I have to follow Mike Bailey and Will Ospreay. I have to follow Mickey James and Trinity. Like, this is something that I think a lot of people overlook. Everybody wants to be the top guy. Everybody wants to be the world champion. But then you look at everything that's going to have to happen before you, and you're going to have to go out there on the biggest stage with all the pressure and follow all these things that are equally, if not more amazing, and try to put on a bigger and better show. That's where the pressure's on you. So it's up to any three of those guys, I think, have the ability. It's just whether they can handle the pressure.
Yeah, like this card for Bound for Glory, I honestly believe it's gonna be one of Impact Wrestling's greatest events ever. And you just listen, just those top three matches alone. This if it does that doesn't convince you to get this show, then yeah, you don't know wrestling right now. You gotta watch this show. It's gonna be amazing, and I'm looking forward to you and Alex Shelley. I'm also looking forward to the UK Evasion Tour. We touched on it with Will Ospreay being a part of it for Turning Point, but Impact has so many great UK talent, whether it be Subculture, whether it be Joe Hendry. Kind of finish up with this interview here. Who would you like to get into the ring with in the UK Evasion Tour outside of the Will Ospreay? Out of everyone on the Impact rosters that's going to be a part of this tour, who would you like to be in the ring with when they come over to the UK?
Well, he was announced today, and it was somebody I saw in Independent when I did it in February for Sovereign Pro, and I saw Leon Slater wrestle for the very first time. And my match hadn't happened yet, but I was watching the entire show before me because I kind of like to get the landscape of, who's doing what and how talented people are on the show. And this kid blew me away. And I lobbied hard for him to get on these Impact Wrestling shows, and luckily he did. And he's going to be a part of them. And hopefully, I get to step foot in the ring with him because I want to experience that firsthand.
Oh man, that would be so great. Just his style is just so unique, and that Swanton 450. I mean, it's just GIF everywhere. Every time he hits it, I see it online everywhere. You got to watch him. It's going to be amazing to watch. But I want to give you the chance here to let everybody know where they can follow you on social media, Josh, where they can see you on Impact Wrestling. It's available on Access TV every Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Available over in the UK, over on DAZN, multiple different platforms. Impact Insiders over on YouTube as well. But want to give you the chance, let everybody know where they can follow you and follow Impact Wrestling.
Well, my social medias for Twitter and Instagram are walking_weapon. Follow all things Josh Alexander there to see where I'm going to be and what I'm going to be doing. And impactwrestling.com is your place for, tickets for upcoming events and everything else.
Thank you so much, Josh. This has been a great interview. And thank you so much for everyone watching. This has been True Heels BTR Between the Ropes with former Impact World Champion and maybe future Impact World Champion Josh Alexander. It is me, your True Heel Phenom SP3, signing off until next time.